Something I don't ever talk about is that I did actually go to university to study business. So I've always been interested in business and wanted to run my own business, and always hated the idea of working for someone else for the rest of my life. So I thought going to university would be the way for me to kind of learn about business and run my own business. So I went to uni, I graduated, I spent 3 years studying a load of stuff, taking a load of exams, and after all of that, I could not start a business. So my whole goal and mission for this X-Minute business degree is to kind of teach you basically more value in the next however many minutes compared to my 3 years at university. So 3 simple goals from this training is to teach you the stuff that actually matters, to help you avoid wasting time, money and stress at the things that don't, but also to give you the confidence that if I can do it, an introverted dyslexic who hates public speaking and jumping on video can do it, then you can too. So just a little heads up, this is a whistle-stop tour into some key intro principles that underpin any successful business, but everything we do will be gone through in a lot of detail step by step, or I will just build it into the trainings kind of autonomously in the background for you. So you don't need to kind of learn and understand everything we're going to go through. This is more just some founding principles or some fundamental principles that underpin any successful business. But as I mentioned, this is all going to be done for you. Everything is going to be broken down with step-by-step trainings, or it's just going to be seamlessly built into the program so that you're doing all of these things without even realizing it. So the first thing we need to understand is a definition of a business. So the definition I've gone with is selling a product or service that solves a problem, provides a pleasure, or both in exchange for fair payment. And that's just a definition I've made up myself just because to me that's what a business is, and it kind of ticks all the boxes in terms of what we're trying to do with our online businesses. So essentially we are selling a product or service that solves a problem, or it provides a pleasure, or both in exchange for a fair payment. So there's 3 key areas that we need to look at. First up is the product and service, then it's the marketing and selling, and then it's the value exchange. So that's the fair price. So if we look at products and services first, so essentially all products will fall into one or more of these 3 categories. So health, wealth and relationships. We know that people are willing to spend their monies on these types of things. So anything that improves your health, your ability to make more money, or to improve your relationships, we know people are going to spend their money on that. So ultimately, we know there is a demand for these types of product or services. When we look at demand and supply, essentially there are 2 sides to the equation. So we've got the demand side and the supply side. On the demand side, this is essentially the client. The supply side is you. So demand is the consumer, supply are other businesses, you and your competition. The demand side is they've got problems and pains, and you've got the solution to their problems or pains via your product or service. So that's kind of how demand and supply is kind of made up. So when we look at the fitness world, we can kind of ask the question, is there demand for the product or service, and is there a lot of supply in the market? So for fitness, we know there is a lot of demand for product and services that help improve our health. The problem is we also know there is a lot of supply in the market. So we know the barriers to entry are quite low. We know there are loads of different ways that people invest in their health and their fitness. So we know there is a lot of supply in the market. The problem when supply exceeds demand is that prices go down, and this is bad for us as coaches as we can't compete on price. So we can't be the cheapest, we can't be the first, and we can't be the largest, because ultimately these guys already exist. So even if you don't agree with them, these people have the ability, because they are essentially the first or the biggest or the largest, they've got huge budgets that we can't compete with. So we can't keep dropping our prices as low as we can. So we know there is so much supply for weight loss that if we try to compete for weight loss and do it based on price, then we're going to lose. So how we can win? So essentially we find out the demand of the consumer. What do they want? So do they just want another weight loss program like Weight Watchers? Ultimately, no, they don't. They want a better, different, quicker, easier and more enjoyable solution. So if we're able to do that, if we're able to differentiate our product from a weight loss product, make it more unique, then ultimately we're going to have an advantage and we're going to be able to sell our products at a much higher price, and not have to worry about what the other guys are doing. We don't have to worry about trying to drop our prices mega low just to get a couple of clients. So whilst everyone else out there is trying to sell weight loss, or if you're into the muscle building world, is trying to sell a muscle gain program, we're selling an experience or a solution that helps our clients overcome their problems and pain in a better, different, quicker, easier and more enjoyable way. So we can also use scarcity. So essentially we're going to use you and your personal brand to keep the supply low but the demand high. And whilst we're able to do that, it means that we're able to keep the prices nice and high. And when we go through your personal branding, you're going to understand how you kind of build your personal brand. You're going to understand how to increase the demand for your personal service. So anyone out there in the world can go and join Weight Watchers today, or they can go and buy a Herbalife product today, but they can't just come to you right away and buy your service. So that's how we're going to go and kind of use scarcity to help increase the demand for your product. And we also just want to make sure that we stand out from the crowd. So I'm going to show you how to do all of this, but ultimately how we communicate that and how we message that in our marketing and our sales is how we're going to be able to win. So when we look at marketing and selling, ultimately there's two reasons why people buy something. The first reason is to solve a problem. The second reason is to achieve a pleasure. So those are the two reasons why people will buy something. It's either to move away from a problem, or it's to get closer to a goal, a result, or an outcome. And we know that people are more willing to solve a problem, a pain, a frustration because it's more hurtful, it's more painful to kind of tolerate that thing. So we know that people are more willing to spend more of their money on solving a problem than they are achieving a pain. And when we understand this, we can use this in our marketing and our selling. So once we understand the main pains, problems, frustrations of our dream clients, and we know what their dream outcomes or goals or results are, we can use this in our marketing and selling. So we can use it pretty much on everything that we're doing. So our sales pages, our websites, our content, sales calls, when we're sending messages, we can use this kind of structure to essentially achieving the result without a pain. And we can use that all the time. I do it all the time in my content. And when we start marketing and messaging our products and services in this way and talking about how we're able to solve your problems without having to do any of the stuff that you don't want to do, we're going to increase the desire, the demand for what we do. And we can see this with a number of different examples. So you might have recognized this guy, but essentially he does it all the time in his marketing. So how to drop 17 pounds and several inches in just 90 days without ever starving yourself or giving up carbs, guaranteed. So he's essentially saying how to lose weight without giving up carbs. So that's how to achieve the result without the pain. It doesn't just have to use the word result. So another example here, he says doesn't. So it's how to create cash that doesn't rely on hustle. So essentially how to make more money for less hard work, essentially is his message. And I do this in my content all the time. So how Chris lost fat without losing muscle. And there's loads of different combinations. There's loads of different ways that you can do it. But for a guy who wants to lose body fat but doesn't want to lose the muscle, for him, this kind of message will be really appealing. So he's more likely to read the content, he's more likely to engage with it, and more likely to reach out and ask for help. The other thing we need to understand when it comes to marketing and messaging is we need to focus on selling benefits or features rather than just the feature. So if we look at a typical fitness program, so somebody might chuck in recipe books, a diet plan, workout, apps, step trackers, Facebook groups, those kind of things. But if you was just to try and sell that, that's not very appealing because it doesn't really say what kind of problems it solves. So what are the benefits of those things? So if we just pick the recipe book as one single feature, we can look at a number of different ways that we can sell the benefits of that feature depending on who it is that we're trying to reach with our product or our service. So if we look at the recipe book, for example, and we know someone's problem is time. So time is a pain for them, it's a frustration. So they don't think they've got a lot of time to cook. We can sell the benefit of that. So quick and easy recipes that can be done in 15 minutes or less, so you can spend more time with the kids. So essentially that's helping overcome their time pain and providing a benefit. So that's the time example for a recipe book. We could also do something like they get bored really easy. So tasty, flexible meals, so you can eat a huge variety of food, so you never get bored eating repetitive meals. If someone's a lazy cook, so we can do minimal ingredient done for you recipes that can be prepared and cooked in 15 minutes or less. And if someone lacks the knowledge, they don't know how to cook, then we can kind of go on the route of like healthy recipes jam-packed with goodness that don't cost a fortune and loved by the whole family. So that's a number of different ways of how we can increase the perceived value of that recipe book by showing the benefit of it and how that benefit and how to overcome their pain with the benefit. And we can kind of pile on even more value if we can make it relatable to those areas of business where we know people spend their money. So if we can tie in elements of health, wealth, and relationships into the benefits, we know we can increase the likeliness of someone wanting to buy that thing or understands the benefit of having that thing. So if we just pick out one example, the last one, so healthy recipes jam-packed with goodness, which don't cost a fortune and are loved by the whole family, we can see that ticks off the health section. We know it ticks off the wealth section, as it's going to save money, and we know it's going to help with the relationships because the whole family can enjoy the meal together. We know that for a family guy or a family woman, having healthy recipes that are full of goodness, that are cheap and affordable, and the whole family are going to enjoy, we know they're going to be more inclined to buy that recipe book or be attracted to that recipe book than selling just a recipe book on its own. So a few general marketing 101s. Essentially, we want to sell results and outcomes rather than plans. We want to sell benefits rather than features. And we want to make sure that we're telling relatable stories the whole time. And we'll go through this in a lot of detail, but essentially there's a key way to tell stories. We want to essentially do it with a hook, tell a story and make an offer. And we do that in a specific way. We know that it works, but it's going to attract people to your content. They're going to relate to it, and then they're going to be more inclined to reach out and buy from you. Okay, so the third section is the value exchange. So what we're looking at here is essentially the pricing. And essentially we need to kind of bring back the demand and supply. We need to talk about value and the perceived value of something. So these two things are going to kind of be intertwined and come into how you're going to price your service so that it's that fair exchange that we're looking for. So when we look at demand and supply, when we know there is limited numbers of supply, we know that the demand is going to be a lot higher. So when demand exceeds supply, the prices tend to rise. So if we give an example of this, a busy hotel, flight or train, when the number of rooms or the number of seats available reduce, so the supply is low, we know that the demand is going to be higher, which means the price can be higher. So hopefully you can see that from the diagram in there. If we look at the opposite end of the scale, so when supply exceeds demand, prices tend to fall. So when there are a lot of rooms available in a hotel, or the flight is empty, or the train is empty, those kind of things, we know there is a large amount of supply, so we know the price is going to be cheaper. And as those seats fill up, or as those rooms fill up, we know the supply is getting restricted, so we're able to put the prices up. So this is kind of the approach that we're using, so using demand and supply as a tool to help price your program effectively. So when we look at some examples in the fitness world, so you've got Weight Watchers or like the fitness market in general, we know there is huge amounts of supply for those kind of things, that the price is really, really cheap. And as I mentioned, we can't compete on price. These guys will always be able to do it a lot cheaper than us. Like, they can make money off of $5 or $10 a month per person. You would have to sell hundreds of thousands of of units to make any kind of money online. So the approach we use is to restrict supply to keep the price really high. Some people will say, can't we just kind of meet in the middle? The problem with being in the middle is that the distance isn't too high above and isn't too far below. So people will either choose the cheapest or they'll choose the most expensive because of the perceived value. So no one's going to really want to go in the middle ground. So I'm going to show you how to build that high ticket premium program, which justifies the high price, so that you're able to offer your program at the high prices. Then you don't need to worry about who you're competing with kind of below your price point. But as mentioned previously in a different training, this doesn't mean you can just slap on a few zeros to your current program or your product or service. It has to be a fair value in exchange. It has to be a fair exchange in value. So remember the definition. It is selling a product or service that solves a problem, provides a pleasure, or both, in exchange for fair payment. So it has to be a fair exchange. Otherwise, it's just going to be a massive headache. So on the client side, if it isn't a fair exchange, you're going to end up with unhappy clients asking for refunds, people saying it's a scam, those kind of things. On your side, if the price doesn't feel fair, you're going to feel like, if you're undercharging, you're going to feel like you're undervalued. So it's not a fair exchange on that side if you're undercharging. Equally, if you're charging too much of a higher price, or you don't think the price is fair, but you're expensive, then you're going to be constantly trying to justify that to the client. You're going to be working your ass off trying to justify the higher price point, and ultimately you'll get burnt out. You won't be able to take on enough clients because you're trying to service too many, a couple of clients, trying to provide too much value so that you can justify the price point that you're offering. And also you'll just be hit with a load of bank charges. So if you're constantly refunding people because they don't see the value in your program, you're always going to be offering or constantly paying bank charges every time you process a refund, which obviously we want to avoid. So it has to be this fair exchange in value, and the way we do that is by offering more for more. So more value for more money, and we do that by creating a high ticket power offer. So that's exactly what I'm going to walk you through in the coming videos. So if that all kind of went over your head and I went through things a bit too quick, don't worry, we're going to break it all down into nice small bite-sized chunks. I'm also going to build in elements of that automatically into the program. So if I just tell you to do something, we know all of these elements that we've been through in today's training are going to be built into that. But hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that kind of explains and kind of gives you a teaser of what's coming up and helps you to understand how the process is going to work, and a few principles which kind of underpin what we're doing and why we're doing it. But yeah, hopefully that was useful, and I will see you in the next training.